Chapter 366. Zhu Yao felt a large wave of cold wind rushing towards her, fast and hurried. She hurriedly swung her sword to block, slashing apart the dense shadows. However, she could not dodge all of them. After slashing apart the front, the back would rush over again. The first few moves were still alright, but slowly her strength began to weaken. Just as she scattered a few shadows, a gust of cold wind came straight at her back. She turned her body out of reflex, but she was still a step too late. Her arm instantly felt pain. Something had stabbed into it, as though a piece of flesh was about to be torn off. She turned her head to look, only to see a black figure was currently biting onto her arm. Its hand was already dripping with fresh blood, and only half of that figure's face was revealed. However, its original appearance could still be faintly seen. Zhu Yao was stunned. Big sis. Yu Ying was startled, as he hurriedly walked over. Zhu Yao gritted her teeth, and instantly used her other hand to scatter that shadow. However, her hand was already bitten so deeply that her bones could be seen. This bite was unlike any other time. In the past, no matter how severe her injuries were, at the very least, she had her cultivation, so she could still grit her teeth and endure it. Now that her divine energy was being suppressed, the pain was evidently even more painful. She could not even feel her own hand anymore. Big sis. Yu Ying was a little flustered, as he hurriedly helped her stop the bleeding. Something was faintly burning in his eyes. Yu Yao. Yu Yan's face was a little anxious as well. Yet, he was unable to come over as he was surrounded by layers of shadows. I'm fine. Zhu Yao solemnly said. Don't be distracted. Now was not the time to worry about such things. Zhu Yao was injured on her right hand, and she could not even hold on to her sword any longer. However, she had no choice but to stand up again. The hell, you're bullying me because I'm not left-handed, right? But it really hurts. She was completely using her flesh and blood to block them, as though they were stimulated by the blood. Those shadows became even more frenzied. Their terrifying cries became even sharper, and every single one of them made one's scalp turn numb. Zhu Yao did not know what they were looking for, as they circled around their surroundings twice, and then they once again attacked her from behind. Zhu Yao had no choice but to turn her body and once again hold onto her sword. This time, the blood on her hand flowed even more violently. Just as the overwhelming shadows were about to drown her, Yu Ying suddenly grabbed onto her hand, and his eyes instantly turned crimson. Scram! In an instant, a black aura that was even thicker than that of the black shadows burst forth from his body, and directly swallowed those black shadows. The black shadows immediately showed a panicked expression. The situation was reversed in an instant. The black shadow that was anxiously staring at them began to scream and flee in all directions. In just a few breaths of time, the scene suddenly quietened down. There were no more black shadows in the air, but there was a devil chi that was even colder and more frightening than the black shadows. Yu Ying's entire person was enveloped within the devilish aura, only leaving behind a pair of blood-colored scarlet pupils that were filled with rage. His gaze caused people to shiver even though it wasn't cold. Zhu Yao's heart instantly sank for a moment, as she reached out with her other hand as well. She tried her best to ignore the devilic energy that was causing her to tremble uncontrollably. With a deep voice he said, Yu Ying, it's fine now. Everyone is fine now. Only then did the anger in his eyes die down bit by bit, and his eyes returned to their previous clarity. At the same time, the surrounding demonic energy also returned to his body bit by bit, until all of it disappeared. He lowered his head and looked at her bleeding hand. Sis, I'm fine. Zhu Yao smiled at him. Thank you. She did not expect that though these black shadows were ferocious, they were still no match for the devilic energy. It was no wonder Yu Ying stood there without moving earlier. It seemed like he wasn't in a daze, but those black shadows had sensed the aura on his body. They didn't dare to approach him, right? Devilic energy. Zhonggu Lu looked over with a shocked expression. Could you be? Even Nan Gongcheng's expression changed. Zhu Yao sighed. It seemed like she couldn't hide it any longer. That's right. Yu Ying is a devil, and the black shadows earlier were chased away by him as well. What do you guys plan to do? Zhonggu Lu and Nan Gongcheng were stunned for a moment. No wonder. No wonder he's the only one who can use mystic arts. Zhonggulu muttered. Divine energy could not be used here, but divinic energy was not restricted. Nan Gongqing looked at Zhu Yao, and in the end he still sighed. I see. Moon deity, fellow Taoist, thank you. There were so many black shadows, and I thought we were dead for sure. Isn't it all because you're stupid? Otherwise, why would there be so many problems? Zhonggulu retorted. The hell? Can you blame me for this? It's all because that Mei Shui is too sinister, alright? Zhonggulu immediately rolled his eyes at him. From the looks of it, they were purposely ignoring the matter regarding Yu Ying and the devil. After all, they had traveled so far together, it would be best if they didn't have any conflicts. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. Her right hand felt cold as it was being held by someone, and she could not help but take in a cold breath. Hiss, don't move. A certain master glared at her in dissatisfaction, and then began to wrap a white cloth around her injured arm. It's fine, master. The bleeding has already stopped. I'll be fine in less than an hour. After all, she had a divine physique, so injuries like this would heal very quickly. His eyes narrowed. Amen. You cover it, you cover it. Woo, master is being mean to me again. They did not stay on the spot. Taking the opportunity when the black shadows left, everyone hurriedly advanced towards their destination. Initially, they had thought that they would encounter at least 2 or 3 waves of black shadows, but strangely, after rushing for 2 days straight, they did not see a single shadow attacking them. Even if a black shadow floated past occasionally, it would just ignore them and drift away leisurely. Zhu Yao thought that it was because of Yu Ying's divinic energy, or because there were too few shadows in the surroundings. However, Yu Ying's divinic energy had clearly been retracted, and basically did not reveal the slightest bit of it. Furthermore, the sharp and terrifying sounds in the surrounding air did not lessen by much either. Zhu Yao's heart sank even more, and the guess that she had been guessing all this while was becoming clearer. On the 3rd day, they finally walked out of that sinister and terrifying land. Their vision instantly brightened, as though they had suddenly walked out of the darkness and into the light. That hazy aura was completely swept away, and large patches of green vegetation appeared in front of their eyes. That's great, we're finally out, Nan Gongqing said with a joyous look. We no longer have to be bothered by those shadows. We're safe. Not necessarily. Zhu Yao clenched her fists, and her worries grew even heavier. Nan Gongqing was startled, as he turned to look at her. Dongfang girlie, don't worry. Look at the clear sky here. Those shadows definitely won't be able to pass through. As long as we pass through this forest, we will be able to reach the light of guidance for ascending into godhood. There won't be any more dangers. Zhu Yao turned to look at the darkness behind her, and then looked at the patch of green in front of her. She frowned. Do you guys know what those shadows are? Nan Gongqing was startled. What could they be? Cold and sinister aura. Gathering and not dissipating, infinitely regenerating. Furthermore, there are shadows that carry such great malice. I can only think of one thing. Yu Yin frowned and coldly said. Resentment. Everyone was stunned. Zhonggulu took a step forward. How is that possible? Doesn't resentment only exist in the underworld and underworld? Why would it appear in the lightning divine tower? And it's even at the final floor of ascending into godhood. I once went to the river of forgetfulness in the underworld. The river of forgetfulness is the only thing that connects the 3 realms. It flows through every single place in the 3 realms, guiding those lost souls back to the underworld to reincarnate. Since the 3,000 worlds have the river of forgetfulness, the divine realm naturally has it as well. Nan Gongqing grew even more confused. What does these shadows have to do with the river of forgetfulness? The resentment of the underworld is hidden at the bottom of the river of forgetfulness. Yu Yin continued with a solemn voice. What you guys mean is, the river of forgetfulness brought resentment into the lightning divine tower. Zhonggulu frowned. But even if those shadows are resentment, we're already here. They can't possibly chase after us, right? And after those resentment were shaken away by Taoist Yu earlier, they never appeared again. What does this have to do with the danger you mentioned? Did none of you feel that there's anything abnormal about those shadows? Everyone looked at each other, And even Yu Yen had a confused look. Master, I want to ask you a question. When you were in the lower realm, did you see someone who looked exactly the same as Sect Master ZMO? Yu Yen was stunned. As someone who was face-blind, ZMO was one of the few faces he could remember. After pondering for a moment, as though he had thought of something, he solemnly said. There was a heretic practitioner who was extremely skilled in the art of transformation, and he could even imitate auras. He once snuck into our ancient hill sect, but was seen through by me. And then, naturally, I killed him. Master personally did it. Amen. As expected, Zhu Yao sighed. A sense of helplessness instantly rose within her. Dongfang girlie, just what do you mean by those words? Nan Gongqing anxiously asked. Zhu Yao turned to look at the 4 people present. Have any of you noticed what those black shadows formed from resentment look like? Everyone. I saw. Zhu Yao solemnly said. I saw a shadow that looked exactly the same as ZMO. That shadow was attacking Master. I even saw. She turned to look at Yuing. Su Nuyen. And he was currently attacking Yuing. Her master and Yuing instantly widened their eyes, as though they had figured something out. In an instant, their expressions turned ugly as well. Just what do you mean? Nan Gongqing grew anxious. And who is this Su Nuyen? Who he is isn't important. Zhu Yao shook her head. What's important is who killed them when they were alive. Zhonggu Lu's expression changed. You mean to say, those resentment were formed from people we had once killed, and that's why they were desperately attacking us? I wasn't certain in the beginning either. However, have you guys thought about why no other shadows attacked us after those resentment were forced away by the devilic energy? Zhu Yao analyzed. Because the other resentment aren't looking for us. They are only looking for creditors. This was also the reason why when those resentment charged over in the beginning, they only surrounded and attacked the few of them, yet perfectly dodged her attacks. Because she had never taken a human life before. Naturally, the so-called resentment-seeking revenge did not exist either. Later on, she was the one who initiated the attack, which led them over. Why did the River of Forgetfulness only send these resentment into the Lightning Divine Tower? And the Lightning Divine Tower has been filled with resentment for so many years. So why have there never been any signs of collapse? Zhu Yao's expression grew even heavier. If I'm not wrong, the final stage of this Lightning Divine Tower is actually a tribulation of karma. You will reap what you sow on that day. Most likely, the things that everyone has done since they started cultivating will be returned to them in this floor. If that's the case, do you guys still think the front is safe? Chapter 367. As long as one could ascend and become a deity, which one of them would have clean hands? Especially in an environment like this where the strong preyed on the weak. Usually the higher one stood, the more blood debts they would have, let alone the fact that there were demonic immortals and devils here. Which one of them did not kill their way out of a bloody path? Dongfang girlie, perhaps it's not as bad as you say? Nan Gongqing waved his hands and smiled, though his smile clearly carried a hint of reluctance. Look, we're already out of this place. Even if those resentments originated from the killings back then, there shouldn't be anything else, right? I don't know either. If this level really is a karmic tribulation, then how could the karma everyone planted back then be limited to just killing? Zhu Yao shook her head. In any case, it's never wrong to be careful. After all, the path to the light of guidance is still long. Everyone nodded cautiously. Compared to their previous relaxed and joyful mood, they were now even more cautious and serious, as they moved forward with all their might. Yuing was their main fighting force, and right now he was the only one who still had a human GPS function. Hence, he took the initiative to walk in front. Zhu Yao and her master followed behind, in charge of observing their surroundings, while Nan Gongqing and Zhonggu Lu were at the back. After maintaining their formation, the group then walked into the large green forest in front of them. This forest was actually not very dense, compared to the forests of the 3,000 worlds that were filled with spiritual energy and divine energy. This place seemed a little barren, as though there wasn't any signs of life. The ground was filled with withered branches and withered leaves, and even the leaves on the trees were yellow and withered, unable to fall off. Not long after they walked, Ewing suddenly stopped and looked ahead with a frown. "What's wrong?" Zhu Yao asked. He pointed to the front. "There seems to be something up ahead? The hell so fast?" Everyone's hearts were in their throats. After listening carefully, there were indeed sounds of fighting coming from the front. They had initially planned to circle around it, but that was a place they had to pass through. In order to prevent any accidents from happening, they had no choice but to be even more cautious. The closer they got, the louder the sounds of fighting became. After walking for a few dozen meters, a large patch of green grass appeared in front of them, and a frantic cry for help could be heard. "Save me! Hurry! Hurry and save me! Hurry and save me!" This voice, after taking a closer look, enemies really do cross paths. Aren't the 3 men and 1 woman in front Mei Shui's group? They didn't know if it was retribution, but they actually encountered trouble again. A flower as tall as 2 people appeared on the grass. The flower was a deep blood red, and its 6 petals were as big as a bathtub. It was actually a bloody mouth, surrounded by a circle of sharp teeth. There were also thorny vines dancing in the air, looking very terrifying. Mei Shui and the other man were being bitten by the flower. Their lower bodies were already in its mouth, and the other 2 men were grabbing their hands, trying their best to pull them out. Mei Shui was in a sorry state. She was so scared that she cried. Her hair was messy and her face was twisted. This time she really cried. She had completely lost the beauty of a pear blossom with tears from before. She was howling like a pig being slaughtered. "Hurry, hurry and pull me out! Save me, hurry and save me!" She waved her hands as she screamed at the 2 men outside at the top of her lungs. Her lower body was bitten by the flower, and blood was flowing out. It was even more turbulent than a woman's period. One of the 2 men outside was holding on to her arm, trying his best to pull her out of the flower's mouth. However, they didn't have any celestial energy, and didn't dare to stand too close. And that flower was already twice the size of a person. Although they didn't let go, the effect wasn't very obvious. She was already slowly sliding into the flower. The man in the flower's mouth saw that this wasn't a solution. He immediately stopped and let go of his hand. Instead, he held on to Mei Shui's waist. "Mei Shui, go out first, then save me." He used his strength to throw her out. With the strength of 3 people, it was indeed effective. Seeing that she was already out of the flower's mouth, the man happily reached out his hand, wanting to ask for help. That flower seemed to be unwilling to let its prey escape just like that. It opened its mouth wide again and pounced forward. It was unknown if it was intentional or not, but the moment Mei Shui came out, she suddenly kicked towards the back, directly kicking the man who was about to ask for help into the flower's heart. Due to the recoil, the flower retreated a few feet as well, swallowing the man whole. That scene happened extremely quickly. Before the man who dragged Mei Shui out even had the chance to be surprised, he had already disappeared into the flower's mouth. Mei Shui and the other 2 took the opportunity to escape from the flower's range of movement. Their faces were pale, and they looked frightened. The 2 men who saved her had ugly expressions as well. Evidently, they had seen that scene earlier. However, the 2 of them chose to ignore Mei Shui's tearful complaints, and began to console her instead. "Mei Shui, are you alright now? Don't be afraid." "But Big Brother Yeyu, he died to save you. I believe he was willing to do so. Yes, he won't blame you. Only when you're safe will he be able to leave in peace. He died a worthy death, a glorious death." The faces of the 5 spectators darkened, as though they had just swallowed shit. "The hell no, I feel like vomiting." Zhonggulu turned around and retched a few times. "I have never seen such a disgusting scene. Such a disgusting deity practitioner." Nan Gongqing could not help but retort as well. "Dongfang girly, are all you deity practitioners like this? Fortunately, I'm a demonic immortal." The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. "This is the first time I've seen such a deity practitioner with such a unique appearance as well, alright? Please apologize to all the deity practitioners in the entire world. Hey, it's you guys." Mei Shui was startled. A hint of panic flashed past her face. "We meet again." Nan Gongqing coldly snorted. "Isn't this what they mean by, the evils we bring upon ourselves are the hardest to bear?" Mei Shui, we have to properly settle the debt from back then. The expressions of the other two men changed as well. They picked up their weapons one after another, and looked at them with wary expressions. If you want to harm Mei Shui, you have to ask the longsword in my hand first. Humph, you bunch of losers actually dare to spout such nonsense. Mei Shui, don't be afraid. We definitely won't let them touch you in the slightest. The two of them had determined looks, as they firmly protected the weak and fearful Mei Shui in the center. However, the two of them understood that it was 3 against 5. In terms of numbers, they were basically not a match for them. They had no choice but to protect Mei Shui in the center, and began to retreat. Unfortunately, before Nangongcheng could even make a move, suddenly, with a swoosh, 2 gigantic vines drilled out from the side of the 3 men's feet. They reached a height of 2 meters, and the tip of the vine spun. In an instant, they split open, and 2 blood-colored man-eating flowers that were exactly the same as the ones nearby bloomed. They pounced towards the 3 of them. Just as the 3 of them were about to once again enter the mouth of the flower, Mei Shui, who was initially standing the closest to the center, suddenly screamed out, "Ah!" At the same time, she pushed with her 2 hands, successfully pushing the 2 men into the mouth of the incoming flower, while she herself rolled on the ground, distancing herself from the 2 flowers. Before the 2 men could even react, and even the oath they made earlier was still ringing in their ears, they were personally pushed into the gates of hell by their lovers. In fact, before they could even ask a single question, their faces were filled with disbelief and shock as they disappeared into the gigantic flower's mouth. She wondered if they would truly be able to live up to their words and die honorably. Mei Shui did not turn back to look at the 2 of them. After she crawled up, she instead ran in the direction of Zhu Yao and the others, as though she had discovered the danger of the grassland and wanted to distance herself from it. Unfortunately, she was still a little too slow. Several dozens of red vines charged out from the ground, instantly wrapping around Mei Shui's body, trapping her on the spot. The red blood thorns on the vines pierced straight into her flesh, creating several bloody holes on her body. Her expression instantly paled, and her eyes were instantly filled with fear. She struggled madly, wanting to crawl towards them. "Save me! Save you guys, save me! Save me!" Zhu Yao frowned and turned her head away. Yu Ying and Yu Yin did not respond, while Zhonggu Lu rolled his eyes. Nangongqing simply spat at her heavily. If she had not schemed against them so many times and snatched away the nascent divided pearls, they might have felt a little sympathy for her. But now, even if they were idiots, they wouldn't be able to reach out their hands. Especially when they saw how she could even push the men around her away without any hesitation. Saying that a person like her had the heart of a snake or scorpion would be an injustice, alright? Mei Shui did not struggle for long. More and more vines wrapped around her body, piercing her to the point where she was dripping with blood. However, the blood was completely absorbed by the green vines. Mei Shui's initially devastatingly beautiful face began to age rapidly. In just a few moments, she had already turned into a white-haired old lady, and her body was shriveling at a speed visible to the naked eye as well. It was as though all the nutrients in her body were being sucked away. The vines, however, grew even greener, and they were even flashing with a faint luster. Red flower buds began to emerge from the vines, crawling all over the vines. They were growing larger and larger, growing to the size of a fist. With a light spin, ruby-like blood-colored flowers bloomed one after another. However, the petals were different from the man-eating flowers from before. There were only 5 petals, and they were formed from crystals. Everlasting flower. Zhonggu Lu fiercely widened his eyes, and his expression instantly changed. The pollen of this flower is extremely poisonous. Breathing it in will harm your primordial spirit. Hurry and hold your breaths. When Zhu Yao heard this, she immediately covered her mouth and nose. The others did the same as well. As expected, the crystal-shaped petals flashed with a red light, and with a few crisp tinkling sounds, they began to explode. In an instant, they turned into red powder that filled the sky, and they sprinkled down. Under the illumination of the sunlight, it was as though a red meteor shower had descended. 15 minutes later, the red powder finally landed on the grass and disappeared without a trace. Mei Shui, whose original appearance could no longer be seen, had long been completely immersed within the vines of the everlasting flower. Suddenly, with a loud boom, the everlasting flower and the other 3 gigantic red flowers began to slowly shrink back into the ground. Even the holes they dug out from the ground had disappeared without a trace. Chapter 368. In regards to Mei Shui suffering the consequences of her own actions, in the beginning, Zhu Yao was still sighing a little about how the affairs of the world were unpredictable. She was especially emotional as she silently lit a row of candles for her in her heart. But soon she couldn't feel it anymore. Suddenly he remembered. Damn. They had to cross this grassland as well. In other words, she would also encounter those strange flowers underground. She couldn't help but shudder at the thought of the giant flower that swallowed one in one gulp without even burping. Was it too late to retreat now? There must be more than one type of strange plants underground. Zhonggulu's expression was exceptionally ugly. Also, I can sense that those flowers have most likely developed sentience. Spiritual intelligence. Zhu Yao was startled. You're saying those earlier were all flower spirits? Zhonggulu nodded. A hint of doubt surfaced on his face. I'm a plant immortal, so I can naturally sense it. Only those flower fairies are different from normal flower fairies. They seem more violent than others. Everyone else was stunned for a moment. Plants that had gained sentience were usually more gentle and gentle. After all, flowers and plants were the most difficult creatures to gain sentience. Furthermore, compared to human practitioners and demonic beasts, they took an extremely long time to grow, and in the early stages, they couldn't even move. Therefore, he had never been impatient, let alone violent. Take that permanence flower from before as an example. It used to be a youth-retaining flower. Only when it develops intelligence will it mutate into a permanence flower. Zhonggulu explained. Also, it's extremely difficult for these flowers to grow, and there are almost none that can cultivate into spirits. Zhu Yao's heart sank for a moment, as she suddenly thought of something. Then what are those 3 man-eating flowers called earlier? Do you know what effect these flowers have on cultivators? Zhonggulu's expression changed for a moment, and he grumbled in dissatisfaction. Seriously, you deity practitioners. Why is it that the moment spiritual wood deity herbs are mentioned, the first thing that comes to mind is its effects? Don't worry about that. Tell me first. The other one should be the heavenly immortal grass. Zhonggulu curled his lips, but he still replied. However, the heavenly immortal herb is originally a spiritual herb that is only a few inches long. He didn't know why it had become so big. As for what effect it has on cultivators, I don't know. I've never eaten it before. The everlasting flower can be used to refine an immortal pellet. Yu Yan suddenly said. This pellet can revive the dead and feast on their bones. As long as his soul didn't dissipate. No matter how serious the injury, it can heal itself within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Holy shit, so awesome. As for the heavenly immortal grass, it can be used to refine the realm-transcending pill. No matter what cultivation level you are at, you will be able to immediately advance by a large realm after consuming it. A major realm. Zhu Yao was shocked. In other words, in the mortal world, if one's original cultivation level was at the nascent soul stage, one could directly become a soul formation cultivator after eating it. And if one was at the soul formation cultivator, one could directly ascend? It's the same in the immortal realm. He added. This is an immortal herb to begin with. Yu Yan frowned. However, the pill formulas for these 2 medicinal pellets have long been lost. I have never heard of anyone in the lower realm who knows how to refine them, let alone the divine realm. Is this Macy's golden finger? He could use the realm-transcending pill to level up. This cheat was much more powerful than hers. It was no wonder back then when they were in the 2nd floor, everyone else was at level 2, and only her head was at level 1. Most likely, her previous levels were all from consuming medicine, and her foundation wasn't stable. Coincidentally, the Lightning Divine Tower was anti-drug. Apui, prohibited from consuming medicine? Dongfang girly, just what are you thinking of? Nangongqing took a step forward and said. Tell us so we can think about it. Zhu Yao felt like crying. I'm just thinking of something. If this floor is really a karmic tribulation, then every single plant that appeared here might be transformed from the medicinal pellets I consumed back then. It can't be. Nan Gongqing panicked for a moment. Who in this world would not consume medicinal pellets when cultivating? Even the flower deity Zhonggulu, for the sake of cultivation, must have consumed high-leveled spiritual herbs before, right? Don't spiritual herbs lack spiritual intelligence? And when I was plucking them, I didn't see any resistance. You've already said that they're spiritual herbs. Zhu Yao rolled her eyes at him. Then this proves that there's definitely spiritual energy and divine energy inside. Where did they come from? Will they automatically run inside? Even those with divine spiritual energy in their bodies can be considered as practitioners. Then, can plants with divine spiritual energy be considered as spiritual beasts that have awakened their spiritual intelligence? The only difference lies in how much spiritual energy they have. It was the same logic as how demonic beasts of higher ranks would have higher intelligence. Also, all medicinal pellets have pellet poison, and divine herbs are no exception. Logically speaking, spiritual herbs contain the purest divine spiritual energy in their bodies. Logically speaking, they should be able to be directly absorbed like spirit stones. Why would they have poison? And where did the poison come from? Could it be that the so-called pellet poison is actually the final revenge of these plants that have just awakened their spiritual intelligence, yet do not have the ability to resist? The entire place instantly turned silent. Dongfang girlie, now that you've said it like that, I'm starting to panic. Nan Gongcheng's face instantly sank. He glanced at the grass field in front of him, and silently took a step back. There's no need to panic though, Yu Yen said with a calm look, as he stroked his disciple's head. If this grass field really proves that it's the fruit of medicinal pellets, then we, master and disciple, have never consumed a single medicinal pellet. I believe it won't be hard for us to pass this stage. All right, Zhu Yao's face brightened. Then what are we afraid of? I've never eaten one either. Yu Ying immediately raised his paw to express his stance. Good job. He rubbed his head. Zhu Yao rubbed her head, and her thumping little heart instantly calmed down. In an instant, she felt as though her entire being had turned domineering. Nan Gongqing and Zhonggulu. That we've eaten one before, hey? What happened to the promised team love? Don't speak as though there's only the three of you here, hey? Dongfang girlie. Nan Gongqing pitifully tugged onto the corner of Zhu Yao's robe, which was pushed away by Yu Ying with a disgusted look. The corner of my big sis robe is mine. What about us? What should we do? Zhu Yao was startled, before regaining her senses. Oh right. I forgot that you guys are still here. Based on Mei Shui's situation earlier, those divine herbs should have appeared according to their aggro value, and the more they consumed, the more frequently they would appear. Tell me, what kind of medicine did you guys consume? How many flowers have you destroyed? How many youthful spiritual herbs have you destroyed in total? Why did she feel that she had become even more of a beast? Not much. What's with this sudden surge of shame? I'm a demonic beast, you know that. In the lower realm, which beast knows how to concoct medicine? I've always swallowed spiritual herbs when I come across them. The hell, you actually swallowed them alive. Before Zhu Yao could say anything, Zhonggulu had already begun to retort. You're too savage and too violent. So you're a beast like that. TCH, you make it sound as though you've never swallowed them before. Nan Gongqing glared at his good friend. Back then, when you took on a human form, didn't you destroy the entire mountain of divine herbs as well? I conquered them with my beauty back then. Zhonggulu felt good about himself, as he used his thick arm to touch his face. This is a competition between us flower deities, you don't understand. This competition is a little too intense, isn't it? You've devoured the flowers, leaves, and even the roots of the divine herbs. More importantly, you didn't even differentiate between male and female, and took them all in. That's too much. We flower deities don't differentiate between male and female in the first place. We can be male or female. May I ask which part of your body is female? This daddy here has never seen such a sturdy girlie, all right? You still dare to say that? When your race takes on a human form, They can choose their gender in the first place. I told you to turn into a female beast a long time ago. Yet you just had to choose a male beast. Now that you've become like this, you're blaming me. Who didn't know how to expose someone's shortcomings? Isn't it all because you said we can choose our gender after taking on a human form? Otherwise, why would we end up like this? It's clearly your fault. It's you. It's you. The group of 3 spectators. They felt as though they just found out about something incredible. The two's "you're heartless, shameless and unreasonable" argument lasted for 2 whole hours. Zhu Yao lost interest after watching for 15 minutes. Together with her master and Yu Ying, she began to study this strange field of grass in front of her. She had never thought of abandoning Nan Gongcheng and his good friend. After all, the karmic calamity was just a guess. Although theoretically speaking, their family, Apui, she, her master, and Yu Ying had never taken any medicine before. That didn't mean they had never harmed flowers and plants. At the very least, she had raised many cacti to death in the modern era. If this field of grass were to remember this as well, then wouldn't she be stabbed to death? Hence, she still had to give this matter further thought. However, the 3 of them did not find any loopholes even after walking a few rounds around the field, and they couldn't go around it either. She immediately squatted at the side and silently dug a hole the size of a wash basin on the field of grass, wanting to see what was hidden underneath. However, it was completely useless. There was nothing underneath. Could it be that those mutated flowers and plants only like to play dirty? Should they dig a hole in the ground? There must be something special in this field of grass. Yu Yan squatted down, pulled his stupid disciple's hand, which was still planning to continue digging, and silently filled up the hole. It seems like it will only be triggered when we truly enter it. So the hole in the ground was useless? Most likely, the things that appear after we enter will differ from person to person as well. Yu Yan continued. Differ from person to person. Zhu Yao was startled. You're saying there's a formation underneath. To be able to control such a large field of grass, and even produce so many strange flowers and plants, and each of them are different, I'm afraid it's not something a formation can achieve. That's laws, Yu Yan said with a sunken voice. Only the laws of heaven and earth can see through everything about everyone, and produce those illogical things. Laws of heaven and earth. Zhu Yao instantly thought of realm spirit. Weren't the so-called laws of heaven and earth created by that guy? Why did she suddenly have a premonition that she was being cheated? No matter what, as long as we enter it, we will be able to investigate the situation. Yu Yan reached out his hand to hold onto her hand, and tightened his grip. This might be a tough battle. Are you ready? Zhu Yao nodded heavily. Amen. Since they were already here, no matter what, they had to reach the end. She took a deep breath, and tightly held on to her master. Just as she was about to step into the field of grass, she suddenly thought of something. Turning around, she looked towards the 2 male leads who were still acting out their drama. The corner of her lips twitched, and she said to the person who was already waiting at the side, Yu Ying, bring them in. Chapter 369. Before Zhu Yao and the others could even reach the place where Mei Shui disappeared, the ground began to change. Her heart immediately jumped. Master said that there were laws of heaven and earth in this land. What would happen? The ground shook as if there was an earthquake. However, the epicenter was not under their feet, but on the ground 100 meters in front of them. Something was emerging from the ground one after another. It grew taller and taller, and when it was about 2 meters tall, a large yellow flower suddenly bloomed on top of its head. There were also 4 crispy green leaves on the branch that looked like little hands, waving around. Huh. Why does it look like a sunflower? It didn't seem to have any lethality. After a while, the row of sunflowers began to sway left and right as if they were dancing. A pair of cartoon-like eyes appeared in the middle of the flower, blinking at them. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Why are they standing so far away? Are they trying to play Plants vs. Zombies? While he was puzzled, the ground suddenly shook again. Less than a meter away from the row of sunflowers, another plant emerged. It was emerald green, with 4 huge leaves at the bottom, and a cylinder that looked like the mouth of a bottle at the top. There was even a strand of a hogue floating behind the cylinder. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched, and two words instantly flashed past her mind. Pea shooter. Why have I never seen these two divine herbs before? Zhonggulu's face was filled with shock. I wonder what will happen next? Hee, they'll probably shoot peas at us. What? Before Zhonggulu could even ask, that pea shooter aimed at them and shot out a gigantic green sphere, charging straight towards them. Zhu Yao, that it really is Plants vs. Zombies. Could it be that the row of sunflowers at the back was used to collect sunlight? The plants are out. Are they zombies? Realm Spirit, come out. I promise to beat you to death. Hurry and get out of the way. Zhu Yao shouted out loudly, and everyone quickly scattered in all directions. The huge green bean smashed onto the ground with a bang and exploded with a boom. Immediately, a large pit of about 4 meters appeared on the ground. Zhu Yao's entire being felt terrible. This was not a pea, this was a nuclear bomb, right? This mutation was too terrifying. The zombie expressed its dissatisfaction. He's here again. Nan Gongqing shouted. Suddenly, the ground shook again. Next to the pea shooter, 4 more similar plants appeared one after another, lining up in a row just like the sunflowers behind them. They were arranged neatly. As soon as the new pea shooter appeared, immediately, a new wave of nuclear bombs was launched. Rumble, rumble, rumble. 5 nuclear bombs were launched simultaneously, exploding all over the ground. The 5 of them were in a sorry state. Zhu Yao was even more careless, as her feet slipped. He almost fell into the pit. Damn it. He wanted to eat brains. Zhu Yao tightened her grip on the sword in her hand, and shouted out loudly. First, extinguish the sunflower that collects sunlight. The 4 of them were taken aback. Which one is the sunflower? What is collecting sunlight? Holy shit. He forgot that his teammates had 0 experience. She had no choice but to correct herself. The row of yellow flowers at the back is the eye of the formation that provides yang, immortal qi to the plants. If we destroy the eye of the array, no new plants will appear. Everyone immediately understood, and their expressions changed as they advanced toward the sunflower. However, there were more and more pea shooters on the grass, almost catching up to the number of sunflowers behind them. Everyone had to dodge the peas that filled the sky, and there wasn't much progress at all. Furthermore, other species were actually beginning to appear in front of them. That was a yellow oval-shaped object. The one with a bitter face should be a nut, right? The one that looked similar to a pea shooter, just that there were a few more hairs at the back of its head, and its entire body was ice blue. That should be the snowflake pea, right? And that purple-colored flower with its mouth wide open, as though it was ready to bite down at any moment. Just how much did these plants love the game? To the point where they were determined to cosplay, hey? Dongfang girly. Nan Gongqing suddenly ran towards her, dodging the 3 peas along the way. I think. Before he could finish, Zhu Yao was shocked. Be careful of that Wuxia. That was an ultimate weapon that could kill a person with a single sitting, hey? Seeing that the lump of green plant had already stood up, at this crucial moment, her good friend Zhonggulu took out a meteor hammer, and threw it towards Nan Gongqing, instantly knocking him out of the Wuxia's attack range. The Wuxia pounced on empty air, and only created a hole the size of a well on the ground. Aya! Nan Gongqing cried out miserably. My butt. Zhonggulu's throw was ruthless. That meteor hammer that was filled with metal teeth, not only did it push him away, it even stabbed deeply into his back, at a certain unspeakable place. More importantly, it seemed like it couldn't be pulled out. Nan Gongqing cried out in pain. He turned around several times, wanting to pull out that impure meteor hammer from his back, but he simply couldn't exert any strength, and couldn't bear to do it. Ouch, it hurts. His cries were like 100,000 twists and turns, with a cadence. Zhu Yao, that Yu Yen, that Yu Ying, that Zhu Yao's face darkened as she silently turned her head away. She definitely did not recognize these 2 shameful plays. She really wanted to type a line of subtitles. Those below 18 years old, please be accompanied by your parents. You can't watch it either. Nan Gongqing evilly held for half an incense's time, while still having to dodge the peas that were everywhere. His voice was so enchanting that even the plants in front of him were trembling. In the end, it was still student Zhonggulu who forcefully pulled the metal chain on the meteor hammer and pulled it out for him. That's right, the meteor hammer was connected to a metal chain. Don't ask why Zhonggulu only remembered it after half an incense's time. She wanted to know as well. When Nangongcheng limped to within 5 meters of her, his lower body was already happily flowing with Big Uncle. Yuing. Stop the bleeding. Unexpectedly, Yuing rejected her request for the first time. I won't stop there. She had no choice but to pat on his arm. Ahem. Little Huang, don't be sad. There will be a few days like this every month. You just have to get used to it. The amount is pretty huge. Why don't I recommend using it at night? Oh right, what were you trying to say earlier? Proper business, proper business. They were still in the midst of pushing the tower and clearing the dungeon. Nangongcheng jumped up and down to dodge the peas, and while he was at it, he replied loudly. This isn't a solution. Those strange plants will only increase in number. Brother Zhonggu and I will cover the rear and help you guys attract the attention of those plants. The 3 of you, take the opportunity to charge in and destroy the formation core. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment. Indeed, according to the rules of the game, the longer the time, the more disadvantageous it would be for the zombies. They had to charge in first and eat their brains. All right. She nodded heavily. You guys be careful. Stay away from those green squash and purple man-eating flowers. Also, if red plants appear, run as fast as you can. She was really afraid of strawberry bombs or fiery chili peppers appearing. Amen. Nangongcheng nodded, and then turned to run towards his good friend Zhonggulu. The 2 of them exchanged glances, and at the same time, they used the strongest killing move they could currently use. Weapon throwing. Zhonggulu used a meteor hammer. After spinning it a few times, he threw it out like a boomerang. On the other hand, Nangongcheng's weapon was a mace that was more direct and violent. The 2 heavy weapons spun towards the middle of the field, clearing a path along the way, and successfully attacked a pea shooter in the middle. That plant that was even taller than a human snapped into 2 with a crack, falling onto the ground. The ground it was on began to tremble once again, as though it was being retracted into the ground. Master Yuing, Zhu Yao shouted. She immediately charged towards the gap in the center, mustering up the strength she had for her college entrance exams, and sprinted over 100 meters. Yuing and Yuyan caught up as well. Evidently, boys had better results in sports, as they soon ran in front of her. Each of them carried her and began sprinting. The other peas had evidently noticed them as well, and with a few pu-pu sounds, several peas flew towards them. The weapons Nangongcheng and Zhonggulu threw out just so happened to return to their hands, and they dutifully began to provide cover. First, they once again played with their weapons like boomerangs, hitting the peas that were chasing after them, causing them to explode in the air. Because the 2 of them were a bigger target, they were able to attract the peas' firepower even more. That was why they acted as a group with good friends. Zhu Yao and the other 2 had successfully broken through the encirclement as well, but earlier, the gap once again shook. It seemed like the substitute peas were about to return. Hurry, exterminate the sunflowers, Zhu Yao said. Yu Ying and Yu Yin had already stood on the left and right, slashing towards the blinking sunflowers. Just as she had expected, the sunflowers did not possess any combat strength at all. With a light swing of her sword, her master chopped down one of them. Zhu Yao ran towards the sunflower at the center as well. She raised her sword and swung it with all her might. However, that sunflower was different from the others. It suddenly bent its waist towards her, and its 2 gigantic leaves spread out, reaching towards her from the left and right. The moment she approached, it lightly wrapped around her, making a hugging action. A clear voice resounded next to her ears. Chick! Zhu Yao was startled, but she could no longer retract her sword. The red blade of her sword slid across the sunflower stem, instantly slicing it apart. She raised her head in shock, only to see the sunflower blinking its eyes at her one last time, before it fell down with a swoosh. The 2 leaves that were wrapped around her slid down her arm as well. There were barbs on the leaves in the first place, but for some reason, they suddenly retracted, not harming her in the slightest. Her heart was in a mess for no reason. She looked at the sunflower again. It had already begun to turn yellow, but it still desperately stretched out a half-yellow leaf and wrapped it around her ankle, making a cracking sound. Must her in the next moment, that sunflower had already been retracted into the ground. Zhu Yao was stunned on the spot. What was going on? This sunflower didn't seem to want to harm her at all. However, the pea shooters outside were clearly firing their cannons so fiercely. Yu Yao. Yu Yan rushed over from the side, hugged his stupid disciple, and rolled on the ground. A loud explosion sounded behind her, and a pea bomb exploded where she was standing earlier. Yu Yan helped her up. Don't be distracted. Amen. Zhu Yao nodded. This wasn't the time to be thinking about these things. First eat her brain, and finish the game. Chapter 370. Though there was a row of sunflowers, with the three of them speeding up their harvest, in less than 15 minutes, almost all of the sunflowers had fallen. After the sunflowers were reclaimed by the field, they no longer showed any signs of growing again. The moment the last sunflower fell, those pea shooters that were attacking in a frenzy suddenly paused. As though the pause button had been pressed, they no longer shot out any more peas. The big-mouthed Wuxia and the others that were swaying left and right stopped moving as well. Dozens of seconds later, with a sudden rumbling sound, they began to dive back into the ground in large numbers. In just a few short minutes, the strange plants could no longer be seen on the entire field. Even the craters on the ground had disappeared, returning to the originally flat and tidy ground. We won. Nangong Cheng and Zhonggulu happily ran over. Their faces were filled with joy. Dongfang Girly, those strange flowers have retreated. Does this mean that we've cleared this stage? I don't know either. Zhu Yao was stunned for a moment as she looked at the endless field in front of her. For some reason, she had a feeling that things were not as simple as they seemed. They had merely eliminated the sunflowers earlier. Logically speaking, there was no reason for the pea shooters to disappear. The light of guidance isn't far away. Zhonggulu pointed to the golden pillar of light that was approximately 2.5 kilometers away. Let's hurry over there. If we stay here, those strange flowers might revive again. Zhu Yao nodded. They indeed had to hurry over, so without any hesitation, she immediately walked forward. Just as she took a few steps, the ground suddenly shook intensely. Compared to before, it was much more severe this time, and Zhu Yao could not even stand stably. About 100 meters in front of her, the soil flew, and something gigantic was slowly rising. The five of them tightened their grip on their weapons as they stared straight ahead. The thing underground first revealed a hint of yellow, and as its height increased, it revealed a hint of green. Compared to the plants earlier, it was clearly much taller. It rose higher and higher, higher and higher. 2 meters. 3 meters. 4 meters. Finally, the entire height of the three-room building was revealed. Corn? Zhu Yao was stunned for a moment. What a huge corn! Nangong Huang said. Can corn grow this big? Zhonggulu asked. Immediately after, the corn suddenly stood up on its own. In the next moment, the ground the five of them were standing on suddenly glowed with a white light. A formation-like circle of light appeared on the ground, and at the center, there was even a tripod that seemed to be used for aiming. This is jade. Rice. Cannon. Cannon. Zhu Yao pulled the people beside her up with each hand, and ran out of the circle of light. Run! She exerted all the strength she had in her life. He ran out as fast as he could. With a whooshing sound, the huge corn had already soared into the sky and was smashing towards the halo. With a loud bang, a huge force attacked him from behind. Her whole body was pushed forward by the aftermath of the explosion. She fell forward, and the ground under her feet cracked inch by inch. She used all her strength not to fall, and continued to run forward. Only then did she barely escape the attack range of the cob cannon. Her bones were already cracking, and before she could catch her breath, she turned around and saw a white object flying toward her. She had no time to dodge. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, as if he had been struck by a boulder. He spat out a mouthful of blood, but he could smell a roasted aroma. When she took a closer look, she realized that what had hit her was a giant popcorn. Zhu Yao once again spat out a mouthful of blood. The next time she watched a movie, she would never eat popcorn again. Yu Yao. Yu Yan was startled. He pushed away the popcorn on her body with his palm and helped his disciple up, grabbing her wrist. Ying was shocked as well. His face paled, and he hurriedly squatted down to stop her bleeding. Don't mind me. Zhu Yao retracted her hand. Hurry. There's still a period of time before that cob cannon can fire corn again. Hurry and destroy it now. Hurry. I'm fine, hurry and go. Zhu Yao pointed to the cob cannon in front of her, which only had corn leaves left. We definitely cannot let it fire a second corn. Yu Yan frowned, and only then did he tighten his grip on the sword in his hand. Together with Ying, he ran over there. The cob cannon was currently in its weakened state, and basically could not attack. However, the corn was simply too huge, so Yu Yan could only slash at the roots of the corn. Zhu Yao turned her head to look at Nangong Huang and his two friends at the side. Their injuries were not light as well, as they sat on the ground, unable to move. At the side, they were even pushing a few pieces of corn which they had pushed aside with all their might. A few crashing sounds could be heard as they turned around. At the place where the corn was smashed earlier, a large crater of several meters wide appeared. However, it had already begun to calm down. Suddenly, the grass at the edge had the chance to automatically repair itself, and began to cover the empty hole. For some strange reason, Zhu Yao wanted to take a look at just what was underground. Taking a deep breath, she stood up and looked towards the hole that had yet to completely calm down. However, she fiercely took a deep breath and froze on the spot. Dongfang girlie, what's wrong? Nangong Huang saw her abnormality and struggled to stand up as well. Walking to her side, he widened his eyes. This is black. A large expanse of black. Beneath the ground, there was actually a layer of bottomless black substance. It was churning and boiling, as though it was boiling water. Resentment. She did not expect that the ground was filled with resentment. As expected, those plants were formed from resentment as well. Nangong Huang unconsciously took a step back, and his expression instantly darkened. What do we do? If they were formed from resentment, then it was basically impossible to kill all of these plants. Before Zhu Yao could even reply, suddenly, the sound of earth quaking could be heard. In a radius of a few dozen meters away from the corn cannons, a few popping sounds could be heard. For plants with yellow flower heads popped out, and they were still increasing in number. The hell, it's the sunflowers that collect sunlight again. Nangong Cheng's face was filled with anxiety as well. The corn had yet to be cut, and now, sunflowers had appeared. Yet they were unable to move. If Yu Yan and the others did not care about the sunflowers, most likely, the ground would once again be filled with pea shooters. If they were to give up on the corn and wait for it to replenish its energy, then these people would not be able to endure another corn. He gritted his teeth and unwillingly walked towards the sunflowers. However, after taking 2 steps, he once again fell onto the ground and puked out a large mouthful of blood. Dongfeng girlie, what do I do? The ground had already begun to rumble and shake, and Zhu Yao was shaken to the point where she was sitting on the ground. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Based on the frequency of the vibrations, it definitely wasn't a pea shooter coming out of the ground, but the next cob cannon. Did they have to play like this? Why did the weapon suddenly level up? Zhu Yao took a deep breath. Calm down, calm down. There had to be another way. Sunflower, sunflower, sunflower. Damn, she remembered now. This plant needed to be fucked. Lunar shadow. She used all her strength to shout at the top of her lungs. Quick, use demonic energy to cover the sun. Don't let the sunflowers absorb the sunlight. Yuan went into a daze, and in an instant his body began to overflow with black aura. Large amounts of black demonic aura overflowed from his body and rose into the sky. It began to look like clouds, and layer upon layer covered half of the sky. The scene suddenly darkened, as if it had suddenly turned from noon to dusk, and the surroundings were already dark. Sure enough, in the next moment, the sunflowers that had been swaying left and right seemed to have lost their spirit, and they all lowered their flower heads. The violent tremors stopped instantly. Yu Yan and Yu Ying's zombies finally got rid of the cob cannon. Turning around, they sprinted towards the row of sunflowers at the back and continued harvesting. Zhu Yao heaved a long sigh of relief. Even her legs were a little weak. Dongfeng girlie, you sure know a lot. Nan Gongqing casually pulled her up, and even supported Zhonggulu at the side. Only then did the three of them limp towards Yu Yan and Yu Ying's direction. You can actually tell that those sunflowers need sunlight. Oh, I just play a lot of games. As a professional game designer, she had specially spent time to research these games. Furthermore, sunflowers are plants that need sunlight greatly in the first place. As long as there's no sunlight to absorb at night, they'll be fine unless… Mushrooms? That's right. Sunlight mushrooms. What? Not far in front of them, a row of yellow mushrooms suddenly appeared. There really were sunlight mushrooms, hey. Did they directly switch to night mode? Did they have to be so professional? The ground began to tremble again. Evidently, the sunlight mushrooms had begun to produce sunlight. Directly pluck them out. These sunlight mushrooms were the closest to the three of them. Zhu Yao had no choice but to endure the injuries on her body, grit her teeth, and run forward. Hugging onto a yellow mushroom the size of a water bucket, she used all of her strength and forcefully plucked it out. However, it was useless. That sunlight mushroom did not even budge. Instead, it blinked its eyes at her, as though it was acting cute. Suddenly, it rubbed against her chest and let out a soft sound. Chick. Zhu Yao was startled. It was that sound again. Just what did it mean? Dongfeng girlie, these mushrooms are too sturdy. I can't pluck them out. Nan Gongqing looked at her with a helpless expression as well. I've even tried using my weapon, but I can't budge it. What should we do? The surface of the mushrooms was already beginning to reveal corn-colored heads. After taking a closer look, there were actually 4 to 5 of them. Yu Yan and Yu Ying had already chopped down all of the sunflowers, and were currently rushing over here. Zhu Yao lowered her head to look at the blinking and unmoving sunlight mushrooms in her embrace. Gritting her teeth, she shouted at Yu Ying. Yu Ying, retract your devilic energy and release sunlight. Yu Ying's feet paused. With a wave of his hand, the devilic energy in the sky instantly dispersed. Boundless sunlight scattered down, and coincidentally shone onto a row of sunlight mushrooms. She then heard the mushroom in her embrace weakly cry out. Tick. That pair of sparkling eyes began to slowly close, as though it was about to fall asleep. The trembling of the ground seemed to have stopped in an instant as well. As for the mushrooms, they began to slowly shrink back into the ground. The flower that Zhu Yao was hugging, at the moment before it entered the ground, suddenly flashed with a golden light. A ball of yellow light flew towards her, and entered her chest. Zhu Yao simply felt warmth in her chest, and a wave of warmth instantly spread to her 4 limbs. She touched her chest a little blankly. Her injuries were healed. Chapter 371. That sunlight mushroom healed her injuries? Why? Zhu Yao was a little dumbfounded. She instinctively sensed her body, only to realize that there were no abnormalities. Logically speaking, that sunlight mushroom was formed from resentment. Even if she possessed world-favorable impression ability, resentment was something without intelligence, so it was impossible for it to have any goodwill towards her. And what was that light that flew into her body earlier? It couldn't be resentment, otherwise not only would her injuries have been healed, she would have turned into a pit. Dongfeng girlie, are you alright? Nan Gongqing looked at her worriedly. Zhu Yao shook her head. Yu Ying and Yu Yan walked over as well. Initially, they wanted to continue taking her pulse, only to realize that there wasn't a single injury on her body, and even the bloodstains had disappeared. Currently, not a single plant was left on the grassland. Even the corn cannon that revealed its sharp yellow tip earlier had returned to the ground. Are there any abnormalities? Yu Yan glanced at his stupid disciple. In the end, he was still worried and took her pulse. I don't know what's going on either. Zhu Yao shrugged and explained the situation earlier. Yu Yan frowned and clenched his fists. What do you plan to do? I believe that the plants here are divided into different regions. The further we go, the harder it will be, Zhu Yao solemnly said. We can't use mystic arts right now, and Little Yellow and Little Teal are injured as well. It'll probably be hard for us to make it to the light of guidance. It's all our fault. Nan Gongqing's face was filled with self-blame. We're the ones who dragged you guys down. Why don't you guys continue forward? Fellow Taoist Zhonggu and I will recuperate here. Once we've recovered, we'll catch up to you guys. Little Yellow is right. Zhonggu nodded as well. Only the three of you have hopes of becoming gods. Our current situation. What nonsense are you spouting? Zhu Yao did not like hearing those words. Who said I'm going to leave you guys behind? We're all together on the first floor, and even if we were to split up, now isn't the time. But Nan Gongqing frowned and turned to look ahead. We don't know what will appear up ahead either. Our injuries are too heavy, and we're just burdens. Even if it's a burden, it's something we willingly carried. Zhu Yao squatted down and solemnly said, Don't worry, I won't leave you guys behind. Even if I have to carry you, I will carry you there. Nan Gongqing was stunned as he exchanged glances with Zhonggu Lu. Little sister Dongfang, you're really a different kind of immortal cultivator. Not to mention the usually emotionless immortal cultivators, even they, the demon immortals, when faced with such a situation, would feel a chill run down their spines. They would leave them behind. Not to mention that they were on the top floor, where danger lurked everywhere. It was said that the great Tao was heartless. From the moment they set foot on this path, they were already used to killing and betrayal. The longer they lived, the less they valued the so-called friendship. He didn't expect that at this time, someone would say that they would carry him there even if they had to carry him. Let's recuperate here for now. We'll set off once your injuries are better. Zhu Yao patted on Nan Gonghuang's shoulder. There shouldn't be any danger around here, but she looked up 200 meters away. As long as we cross the boundary of the sunflowers, I'm afraid a new wave of plants will appear. Yu Yan, however, frowned and pulled onto her hand. You've already made your decision. What he said was a definite sentence, not a question. Zhu Yao chuckled. Master, I have an idea. I want to take a look at the boundary of the sunflowers by myself. Nonsense. Yu Yan's expression turned cold. That place will definitely be more dangerous. How are you going to deal with it alone? Master, I feel that those plants don't want to harm me. She touched her healing chest. His frown deepened. If that's the case, why were you injured earlier? Although he knew that his disciple's physique was abnormal, in the situation earlier, those corn and peas did not have the slightest intention of avoiding her attack. What he said made a lot of sense. Actually, I'm talking about those sunflowers and mushrooms. Master, you should be able to tell as well, right? Those two plants collect yang. I'm talking about the formation cores. They're the key to the appearance of all the plants. That's why they were intentionally planted so far away. However, I feel that only those two plants are friendly to me. They must be different from the other plants. Even if they're formed from resentment, there must be something more to them. Perhaps I can talk to them. Yu Yan was still frowning. Evidently, he did not agree to such a risk. We don't have any other choice. We can't just sit here and wait for death. More importantly, she felt that there was something strange about that G sound. In the past, only wood spirits would do that. However, the wood spirit was far away in the wilderness, and it had already taken human form, so how could it possibly appear here? Nangong Huangzhong and Gulu recuperated for 2 whole days before the injuries on their bodies were mostly healed. Although her master had already agreed for Zhu Yao to be the vanguard this time and enter the next realm alone, Zhu Yao's heart was filled with regret. However, they were still guarding the border, in case any problems arose and they could provide help in time. Zhu Yao took a deep breath, and only then did she walk out of the place where the sunflower had appeared. However, after taking a few steps forward, the ground began to move. The people behind him instantly tensed up and subconsciously tightened their grip on the swords in their hands. A moment later, with a piu-piu sound, as expected, a sunflower appeared. However, it was not 100 meters away, but had directly popped out next to Zhu Yao. The moment the gigantic flower plate opened up, 2 eyes blinked as they looked at Zhu Yao. As though it was stunned for a moment, it suddenly let out what seemed to be a joyful sound. Ji. Zhu Yao stiffened and waved her hands at it. Hi. Ji. The sunflower let out a doubtful sound, as though it did not understand her words. Zhu Yao had no choice but to switch to the Ji language at the last moment and mimicked it. Ji. That sunflower instantly responded with incomparable joy. GGG. GGGG. There's nothing wrong with this reply, right? Hence, the conversation between the human and sunflower began to develop in a strange direction. GGGGG. 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 Wait a minute. Just what in the world was she doing? Why did they have to compete on who had more GS? Hey? Amazing. Nangong Chung, who did not know the truth, had a look of worship. Dongfang girly, you can actually understand the sunflower's words. Everyone. They really wanted to break off all ties with him. Zhu Yao found her mother tongue at the last moment. Though she said that she was going to talk about life with the sunflower, just where was she supposed to start? I say sunflower. Gee. Though the sunflower straightened its thick and sturdy stem, looking as though it was being obedient. Just what are you? Also, do you know me? Gee. It tilted its head and let out a long sound. Suddenly, it stretched out a gigantic leaf and wrapped it around her wrist. It then called out in a crisp voice. Lord. Lord again? What's Lord? Why are you calling me that? The sunflower began to twist left and right, as though it was shouting out a slogan. Lord, Lord. Sunshine, sunshine. Lord, Lord. With every twist it would shout out, like bamboo shoots after a rain. Even more sunflowers began to sprout out from the ground. They lined up on both sides of her, as though they were welcoming her, and began to twist as well. In an instant, the entire field reverberated. Lord Sunshine. Such voices, such orderly movements, and such unified chants, made it seem as though they were conducting a military parade. Zhu Yao was a little dumbfounded. She seemed to have received an incredible welcome. The number of sunflowers increased, and they were spreading forward, opening up a path that directly led to the boundary of the light of guidance. She instantly felt as though she had entered the sunflower country for a friendly visit. This was the true green VIP passage. Just what was she going to do? Or should she go? Or should she go? The four-man operation team at the back was stunned as well. What was with this harmonious scene? Dongfang girly. Nangongqing shouted out. This. Just what is this? I don't know either. Zhu Yao shook her head. These sunflowers don't have high spiritual intellect, and most likely, they can only move based on their instincts. I don't know if I can convince them either. Master. Zhu Yao looked at Yu Yan at the side. You've never eaten a medicinal pellet, so their hatred towards you should be the smallest. Why don't you come over and take a look first? Yu Yan nodded. He glanced at his surroundings and then he took a step forward. Seemingly in an instant, the joyful sunflowers which were still cheering earlier instantly quietened down. They turned to look at Yu Yan in unison. Zhu Yao's heart could not help but clench. However, in the next moment, those sunflowers once again turned their heads and continued to twist their Lord Sunshine words. Yu Yan safely walked to Zhu Yao's side. As expected, these plants would only react towards people who had taken too many medicinal pellets. Next was Yuing. Different from Yu Yan's disregard, when Yuing walked over, all of the sunflowers leaned back as though they were disgusted. Zhu Yao guessed that it was probably because of the devilic aura around his body, which was why they would subconsciously avoid him. Only Nangong Huang and Little Teal were left. Zhu Yao had no choice but to raise her guard. Different from Yu Yan and Yuing, these plants were formed from resentment of plants. The reason why the sunflowers ignored them was because they had never eaten any medicinal pellets, and did not have any hatred towards them in the first place. But they, Nangong Huang, walk over first. Zhu Yao solemnly said. Be careful. Naturally, Nangong Chen could see the situation as well. These plants were most likely coming for the two of them. In an instant, the guilt in his heart grew deeper. If not for the two of them, the three of them might have arrived long ago. The moment he thought of this, he could no longer take a step forward no matter what he did. Dongfang girly, why don't the two of you leave first? If one of them could pass, then so be it. The hell? Zhu Yao really wanted to curse out. Why are you still spouting nonsense now? Are you a man or not? Chapter 372. The hell? Zhu Yao rolled her eyes at him. Don't play with me right now, alright? Since we've already come this far, it's already too late to disband. You'd better tighten your skin and hurry to the light of guidance in one breath. If you want to stay behind and mess around with Zhonggulu, no way. The two of you don't have a future. Zhonggulu. Why did he still get shot even though he was lying so far away? Nangong Cheng's eyes reddened. Mama's egg, Dongfeng girly. At such a touching moment. Can't you speak properly? They're innocent. He turned to look at Yu Yen and Yuing and sighed. It seemed like they really weren't going to leave them behind. Taking a deep breath, Nangong Cheng gritted his teeth, and then stepped into the new territory. Seemingly at the instant his feet touched the ground reacted. With a series of rumbling sounds, it seemed like something was about to break out from the ground. Zhu Yao was betting on a cucumber. That definitely wasn't a sunflower, but some kind of weapon of mass destruction. The sunflowers that were still warm like little suns earlier suddenly stopped shouting as well. They looked towards Nangong Cheng in unison, though they were still blinking their eyes. Zhu Yao could see the glint of hatred in their eyes. Crap. It seemed like it was going to turn into zombies versus plants again. What to do? What to do? These plants were going to go berserk. In a moment of desperation, Zhu Yao grabbed onto the sunflower's flower head next to her. Calm down, dear. Give me some face. Suddenly, the tremors of the ground really stopped. Her face sure is big. The bright yellow flower head in her hand slowly blinked, and in the next moment, the entire flower head was suffused with a hint of strange red. Is she being shy? Please, you're just a flower, hey. The hell? Why did even the stem turn red as well? Do you have to be so human? Wait a minute. She remembered. Plants seem to use flowers to spread their pollination and reproduce. Then the flowers were their unspeakable parts. She suddenly felt unwell. Her vision blurred. The few sunflowers closest to her suddenly bent down and moved their flower heads closer to her. The little eyes on them blinked happily, as though they were saying, "Touch me, touch me." She wanted some time alone. Seeing as more and more sunflowers were moving towards her, in order to build a good relationship with them, Zhu Yao was really afraid that they would continue to go berserk if she were to reject them. But to the big flower plate, she couldn't bring herself to do it. He could only settle for the next best thing. He silently pulled up one of their leaves and shook it as if he was shaking hands. This was considered as a greeting. But even so, why are you guys blushing? Aren't you guys sunflowers? Hey, what a nice sunflower. Lowering her head with a bashful face, what the hell was that? And the tree with its leaves covering its face. I didn't do anything to you. Zhu Yao suddenly felt as though she had fallen into a pervert's camp of pure young girls. And she seemed to be the benefactor. She hugged her master to calm herself down. Fortunately, she still had her master. Zhonggulu came over as well. At first, there was no reaction from the grass, but as he walked closer to Nangong Cheng, the ground became restless. No matter how Zhu Yao tried to form a relationship with the sunflowers, he couldn't suppress it. There was already half a corn on the ground next to him. Zhu Yao's heart clenched. Could aggro be stacked? He immediately told the two of them to move further away. As expected, the commotion on the ground stopped. Zhu Yao silently glanced at the two of them. That's why it was said that there was no future for gays. The situation seemed to have stabilized. Zhu Yao began to move forward with everyone. There was a distance of about 3 meters between them. Only Zhonggulu and Nangong Cheng were separated by at least 10 meters. Zhu Yao walked at the very front. As she walked, she did not forget to shake hands with the sunflowers on her left and right. The sunflowers were rather obedient as well. When they saw her walking over, they automatically handed out their leaves. After shaking hands with her, they hurriedly used their leaves to cover the flower plate with a bashful and excited look. As Zhu Yao shook hands with them, she felt more and more like a leader of a country visiting a friendly country. Greetings, citizens of Sunflower Country. I'm a representative from the human country. Greetings, comrades. You've worked hard. Just like that, they headed towards their destination without any obstructions. Probably because her friendly visit was really effective. After a round of face washing, there were no longer any weapons of mass destruction appearing on this vast grassland. She loved peace. But her hands were about to break. Hey, Though shaking hands was not a hard job, she could not endure it. She had been shaking hands for 4 hours straight. Yet, she did not dare to stop, afraid that the moment she stopped, these sunflowers would turn on her at any moment. Especially as they walked forward, the number of sunflowers that appeared increased. Initially, there were only 2 rows of them, one on the left and one on the right, but as they walked further, the number of sunflowers increased to 3, 4 and 5 rows. When she finally reacted, other than the path they intentionally left behind, the entire grassland was already filled with sunflowers. They had collected too much sunlight, but the enemy zombies had already spoken to them, so they had no place to use it, and could only plant sunflowers? Wait a minute, sunlight. The plants here were formed from resentment in the first place. Resentment was of the yin attribute, while light was of the yang attribute. The resentment underground required sunflowers to absorb sunlight in order to transform into various weapons that could harm people. However, yin and yang countered each other. Light was the same as spiritual energy and divine energy in the first place. It was the purest energy in the world. Though sunlight could not eliminate resentment, it should be able to suppress it at the very least. This was most likely the reason why the place she woke up in was completely dark. Furthermore, no matter if it was the shadows formed from resentment, or the plants here, in reality, none of them could compare to the resentment she saw in the underworld back then. Back then, she was already a demigod, yet she was still helpless against resentment. It seemed like the yang energy of the world was suppressing these resentment. In the beginning, she had treated all of this as a retarded setting similar to the 5 child flags and the 9 palace grid. She treated this as an upgraded version of Plants vs. Zombies in reality, so she did not think too deeply into it. However, this was after all the final stage to become a god, so it was impossible to just casually create a game. Furthermore, there was a fatal weakness like the sunflowers. Adding the fact that yin and yang countered each other. Why did the sunflowers here need to absorb sunlight in order to summon other of their kind? It couldn't be because of the setting of the game. Then it could only be. Zhu Yao's heart sank, as she suddenly recalled her master's words. The laws of the world. Could it be that the laws here were yin and yang countered each other? Due to the restrictions of the laws, these resentment could only take form after sunflowers absorbed sunlight. However, sunlight could suppress resentment. The reason why the sunflowers were friendly to her was because of the sunlight in their bodies. She was so familiar with the wood spirit, and she had even placed it into her divine sense. It was naturally understandable for these sunflowers, which were also plants, to feel close to her. Adding that back when she was in Yiling's dungeon and turned into a tree demon, she could hear the words of trees, and those trees were strangely friendly to her as well. Furthermore, it seemed like the demons with lower cultivation levels treated her better. On the other hand, demonic beasts and demons like Nangongcheng and Qingulu, who had already become deities, especially those who entered the lightning divine tower, did not have that kind of affinity, and could only be treated as normal people or friends. It was the same when she went to the demonic immortal continent back then. Though the red and yellow demonic immortals she met at the start seemed to have a very good impression of her, they still sent her to prison due to their principles. They were completely different from those demonic beasts in the lower realm, who only wanted to protect her and act cute. Those demonic beasts treated her well, rather than saying it was a world-favorable impression. It was more like an instinct, a psychological cue that could not be resisted, and they would subconsciously treat her well. This kind of instinctive cue would make the sunflowers, which had their resentment suppressed, and possessed a little bit of intelligence, release goodwill towards her. Could this be the reason why these sunflowers liked her? But why did they call her Lord? This was something she could not figure out. Seeing that the light of guidance was already approaching, Zhu Yao's hands were already numb from holding on to them. She could barely feel her own hands, let alone lift them up. Her master, who was the closest to her, could still hold on to her hands in the beginning to help move them around a little to alleviate the soreness. However, every single time, she would be met with opposition from the plants. They would always push her master away when she wasn't paying attention, or intentionally use their leaves to block him. They made it seem as though the two of them were having an affair, and they had to cross several sunflower mountains before they could meet. In the end, even Yu Yin himself had run out of strength. In the end, she was no longer the one who took the initiative. Rather, with every step she took, the sunflowers on her left and right would automatically stretch out their leaves to wrap around her hands. This could be considered as having shaken hands. Her heart was so tired. Mama's egg, who wants to try holding hands for 3 days and 3 nights. It was still all right in the beginning, but the number of sunflowers behind her grew. From afar, apart from the one in the middle that was intentionally left empty, as far as the eye could see, it was a field of sunflowers. It was a field of dazzling gold, and it could basically blind her eyes. Yet, only the 2 rows of sunflowers at the side were able to hold her hands. As for those that could not, they could only blink their eyes and look at her with resentful looks. Hey, don't turn white, hey. Even if you can't hold a sunflower, don't mutate. And the one that's lying on the ground, you planted it too far away. Even if you lie on the ground, you won't be able to hold my hand. Don't waste your energy. The passion of the people of the sunflower country really made her, who was from the human country, speechless. Let us contribute to the friendly relationship between the sunflower kingdom and the sunflower kingdom. I'll hold. Zhu Yao's repetition was extremely meaningful and effective. Their journey was actually smooth, and they were about to reach the vicinity of the light of guidance. Of course, there were a few small interludes, but most of them were problems with the distance. The distance between Zhonggulu and Nangong Huang was very subtle. It was not good if they were too close or too far away. If they were too far away, her favorable impression ability would lose its effect, and the plants would attack. If they were too close, the two's aggro would overlap, and the plants would attack indiscriminately as well. Chapter 373. 4 days later, the group passed through the sunflower country, without any mishaps. Zhu Yao could already see the light of guidance not far away, compared to the light of guidance in the high divine realm back then. This pillar of light did not look any different. However, for some reason, it looked golden from afar but pure white from up close. And the ground about 20 to 30 meters away from the pillar of light was actually white. She subconsciously looked at the ground, only to realize that it was not covered with white jade, but completely empty, as though not even dust could enter it. It was sacred and elegant, as though it was the cleanest thing in the world. With just a glance, she felt as though her heart had calmed down. This is the light of guidance for ascending to the God realm? Zhu Yao finally finished holding the last sunflower's leaf. She raised her head to look at the pure white pillar of light, and then looked at the gradually disappearing greenery on the ground. She finally arrived at her final destination. However, for some reason, she did not feel the slightest bit of joy. Instead, an indescribable feeling rose within her. After hesitating for a long while, she did not enter, until Zhonggulu and Nangong Cheng caught up. So this is the light of guidance. Nangong Cheng's face was filled with shock. He walked in a little daze and subconsciously reached out his hand, as though he wanted to touch something. I've never seen such a pure color before. Zhonggulu looked the same as well. The strange feeling in the depths of Zhu Yao's heart grew even stronger. She could not help but feel a little flustered. She turned around to look at the path she came from uneasily. The sunflowers that covered the entire grassland suddenly began to return to the ground. Starting from the furthest point, they disappeared one by one, like scallions falling down. When the last sunflower she held on to saw her turn around, it tilted its large flower head and replied with a joyful look. Chick. As it called out, it even stretched out its leaf, as though it wanted to shake her hand again. Zhu Yao reflexively wanted to reply, but she suddenly realized that the leaf it stretched out was currently disappearing, as though it was being devoured by something, inch by inch. First, it turned from green to bright white, and then it shattered and disappeared. When Zhu Yao regained her senses, half of its leaf was already gone, leaving behind only a neat cut, as though it had been cut off by something. Chick! That sunflower cried out in shock, and immediately shrunk back into the ground, as though it was frightened by something. Sunflowers can't enter this area? Before she could think clearly, a bang suddenly rang out. Yuing had raised his hand, and was currently hammering something in the air. Sis, I can't get in. Turning his head to look, he saw that Yuin seemed to be blocked outside a transparent barrier, unable to take a step forward. How is this possible? Zhonggulu turned around to look at his surroundings seriously as well, and then paced back and forth a few times. There aren't any formations or barriers here? Zhu Yao's heart clenched, as she inspected the surroundings as well. Indeed, there weren't any traces of mystic arts at all. Just why is that? Because I'm a demon. Yuin lowered his head slightly, a look of disappointment on his face as he muttered with a hint of self-mockery. I never had the right to become a god. Zhu Yao's heart clenched. The others also fell silent. There must be another way. Zhu Yao stroked his head. Don't worry, I told you that I won't abandon anyone. Only then did Yuin raise his head. His eyes seemed to be flashing with starlight. A moment later he carefully said, If you become a god, will you still return? Of course. She nodded as a matter of fact. I'm only here to push down the tower, not to become. Halfway through her words, she was stunned. Wait a minute. Push down the tower? Something instantly flashed through her mind, and she did not manage to grasp it. Just as she was about to ponder, a green vine suddenly broke out from the ground and appeared right in front of them. Like a hemp rope, it split into two. It charged over. Sis. Yuin was startled. He instinctively pulled Zhu Yao and rolled on the ground, dodging that vine. The vine instantly split into two, sweeping towards them from the left and right. One of them headed towards her and Yuin, but was instantly turned into ashes by the divinic energy Yuin summoned. The other vine, however, directly struck Zhonggulu at the side, sending him flying. He was instantly sent flying a dozen meters back, landing in the midst of the sunflowers that had yet to completely disappear. Zhonggulu! Zhu Yao exclaimed. She wasn't on the grass right now. Almost at the instant he landed, 5 cob cannons immediately appeared on the grass. 5 overlapping aiming formations instantly appeared beneath Zhonggulu's feet. Hurry and run! Zhu Yao shouted with all her might. She wanted to charge out and save him, but it was already too late. 5 gigantic cobs had already been fired. Even though Zhonggulu desperately ran out, he was still struck by the 5 cobs. 5 loud booms resounded, and in an instant, dust and white popcorn were flying everywhere. Zhonggulu was already lying on the ground with his entire body covered in blood. His legs were already a bloody mess, and his upper chest already had a huge hole. His human form was almost unrecognizable. Ha 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 ha. A few dozen feet away, a sinister and maniacal laughter resounded. A person whose entire body was wrapped in thick tree bark was currently standing a few meters away. Her entire body was blood red, and the tree trunk would occasionally drip with black and red blood. The face at the heart of the tree no longer looked human, and only 2 black holes remained. It looked extremely terrifying. However, everyone present could still recognize her with a single glance. Mei Shui. The hell? Why is she still alive? Brother Zhonggulu. Nangong Cheng's eyes reddened. He immediately wanted to charge out and save him, but Zhu Yao quickly grabbed onto him. What are you doing? Let me go. Calm down. Calm down, my ass. He instantly flared up, and immediately threw a palm strike at her, wanting to push her hand away. I'm going to save him. Zhu Yao immediately stepped on his feet, and scolded while he was in pain. Those plants already have a lot of hatred for you in the first place. Are you trying to kill him faster by going out? If you want to die, don't freaking drag us down with you. Nangong Cheng was startled, and only then did he calm down. If he went out, there would probably be 5 more cobs appearing. Master Yuing. Zhu Yao gave the 2 of them a look, and then ran towards Zhonggulu's direction with Yu Yan. Yuing immediately understood as well, and immediately released his divinic energy to cover the sunlight in the sky. As expected, in the next moment, all of the sunflowers lowered their heads, and the reloading speed of the 5 cob cannons slowed down as well. Zhu Yao took this opportunity, and together with her master, they quickly carried Zhonggulu, who no longer looked like a human, to the borders. Yuing, hurry! Placing Zhonggulu down, Zhu Yao hurriedly pulled Yuing to stop his bleeding. He was the only one here who could save him. On the other side, Mei Shui had already gone completely insane. Blood was constantly seeping out from her pair of black holes. Yet she still stared straight at them. The hatred in her eyes seemed to want to devour them cleanly. Her laughter grew stranger and stranger. Ha ha ha. I'm this pitiful? What right do you have to become gods? Die. All of you must die. I'll kill you. Nan Gongcheng raised his weapon and charged towards Mei Shui. However, before he could even approach her, 3 gigantic red man-eating flowers instantly appeared in her surroundings. They were completely different from the ones they encountered before, and were the same as the ones that devoured Mei Shui. He was stunned for a moment. Mei Shui could control these plants? Nangong Huang, come back. Zhu Yao called out to him. She turned to look at Mei Shui, and her expression sank. She is about to be completely devoured by resentment. In essence, she's not much different from those flowers outside. The current her most likely doesn't even know who she is. Nan Gongqing clenched his fists. After suppressing for a long while, he finally endured the thought of disregarding everything and charging forward to take revenge. He once again turned to look at his good friend on the ground, and his eyes were instantly filled with incomparable pain. I'll kill all of you. On the other side, Mei Shui was still madly gesticulating, yet her eyes were completely unfocused. Vines extended out from her body, wildly sweeping in all directions as she strangely laughed. Ha 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 ha. I'm the favored child of the heavenly Tao. How can I possibly lose? I've never lost before. That's right. I won't lose. It's all your fault. It's all your fault. You're the ones who recklessly obstructed me. Obstructing me means death. Ah ha ha. She madly laughed for a moment. Suddenly, she looked towards the pure white light of guidance, and her bone-like face began to crack inch by inch. As though she wanted to pull out a smile, she stretched out a withered branch. Light of guidance. I can become a god. I can finally become a god. She suddenly began to crazily move towards the light of guidance, however. She had already completely turned into a plant. The moment she moved, the cracks on her body grew even more severe. However, it was as though she could not feel it at all, as she desperately crawled in. The moment the tree bark and leaves on her body touched the white ground, they immediately disappeared. She desperately crawled in, as though she was peeling off a layer of skin from the plant, dragging out a long trail of blood on the ground. However, she did not stop. Within her pair of black hole-like eyes, there seemed to be too much madness. Not a moment later, her original plant body was peeled off. She had been devoured for too long, and her body had long become one with the resentment. With this peeling, even her skin and bones were peeled off. In just a moment, only a cracked skeleton was left on the ground. However, she was still crawling towards the light of guidance bit by bit. A moment later, that skeleton could no longer hold on, and it began to scatter. At this moment, her entire body solidified, and even her original facial features could be seen. Zhu Yao turned to look at the scattered bones on the ground, especially that black hole-like skull. She then looked towards Mei Shui, who was just a step away from the light of guidance, and let out a long sigh. Just how much of an obsession did she have with becoming a god? She could not even sense that she had already died, and even her soul still wanted to crawl in? Mei Shui had already crawled to the front of the light of guidance. With wild joy in her eyes, she immediately crawled up, and without any hesitation she walked in. Zhu Yao thought that it would not work, however, she never expected that the white light would grow even brighter. Even Mei Ling, who was only left with her soul, began to slowly rise along with the light. Her face was full of joy, but that smile only lasted for a moment. As she rose higher and higher, the emotions in her eyes became less and less. Not to mention joy. Even the look in her eyes when she looked at them did not have a trace of resentment. Zhu Yao's heart trembled, as she instantly understood something. Chapter 374. Brother Gu Lu. Nangong Cheng's voice sank. Looking at Zhong Gu Lu, whose aura was growing weaker and weaker, he clenched his fists tightly. Zhu Yao's heart rose as well. Though Zhong Gu Lu had avoided the center of the cob cannon, and was not hit directly, with such a huge impact from the explosion of 5 cob cannons at the same time, it was already a miracle that Zhong Gu Lu was still alive. However, his inner core had already been shattered, his primordial spirit had already dispersed, and even his soul was faintly showing signs of leaving his body. His injuries were extremely severe, and even if everyone exhausted their celestial core power, they wouldn't be able to save him, let alone in a situation where they couldn't use celestial power. Ying. Zhu Yao looked at the expressionless Ying at the side. After a closer look, the corner of his brows had indeed sunk a little. Do you have any ideas? Right now, she could only rely on him. Ying raised his head and glanced at her. He then looked at Zhonggulu, who was gasping for breath with only his upper body remaining. A moment later he solemnly said, "There's only one way." What? Nan Gongqing immediately turned to look at him, and his eyes instantly lit up. He reached out to grab his hand excitedly. Daoist friend, you have a way to save him, really? Ying frowned and immediately dodged it. After glaring at him for a moment, he then continued to look at Zhu Yao and said, "The flower deity's body is weak. Now that his primordial spirit has dispersed, and his inner core has been destroyed, his soul will leave his body in less than 15 minutes. Unless what?" Zhu Yao asked. A trace of hesitation flashed across his face, and his expression became somewhat apprehensive. A moment later he gritted his teeth, as if he had made up his mind, and said, "Unless he follows me and becomes a demon." Bedevilment. Everyone was stunned. Even Nan Gongqing had a look of surprise on his face. He said almost reflexively, "No. He's an immortal. How can he? Then I can't help him either." Ying immediately stood up, and returned to stand behind Zhu Yao, looking as though he did not care about this at all. Nan Gongqing glanced at the dying Zhonggulu on the ground, his fists clenched even tighter. That's right. If he was demonized, Zhonggulu could indeed immediately recover under the assistance of devilic energy. But the devil race had always been cruel and murderous, a synonym for evil. The nature of the demon race was to commit all kinds of crimes. They were the public enemies of the three realms, be it demons or humans. He did not have the slightest favorable impression of the demon race. Although no one had seen it before, it was an innate sense of disgust that seemed to be imprinted in their blood. Although Ying was of the devil race, they had indeed seen the devil chi that he released. However, he had been helping them along the way, so from the bottom of his heart, he did not see him as an unscrupulous evil demon. But now he heard that his good friend was about to become a demon. Only then did he truly realize the difference between them. Bedevilment. That meant that Zhonggulu would stand against him. Not to mention, devilish energy had always been the darkest thing in the world. He did not dare to imagine if Zhonggulu would still be his original self after becoming a devil. There's not much time left. Ying reminded. Zhonggulu's aura on the ground had weakened by quite a bit. Nan Gongqing clenched his fists so tightly that his palms began to bleed. His heart was in a mess. Maybe he can be like Mei Shui. His eyes lit up and he said excitedly, "Yes, that's right. He could become a god. Just like Macy just now. She could pass through the light of guidance even though she was only left with her soul. So Brother Gulu would definitely be able to as well. I will bring him over right now." As he said that, he immediately crouched down and carried Zhonggulu up. Wait a minute. Zhu Yao took a step to the side and blocked his way. "Dongfang girlie." Nan Gongqing grew anxious and solemnly said, "If there's anything, we can talk about it after Brother Gulu becomes a god. If I were you, I wouldn't do that. It's best if we don't approach this light of guidance." Zhu Yao raised her head and looked at the light. Becoming a god might not necessarily be a good thing. What do you mean? Not just Nan Gongqing, everyone else looked toward Zhu Yao. Wasn't their goal in coming here to become a god? Yu Yan took a step forward and looked towards his own disciple. He looked at his disciple. Did you discover something? Zhu Yao was silent for a moment, before solemnly saying, "I feel that we might not be able to enter the realm of gods from here. Or should I say, I suspect that this world really has a realm of gods?" Nan Gongqing was stunned. "Dongfang girlie, what did you say? Isn't this the light of guidance of the realm of gods?" "This is indeed the light of guidance, but who can be sure that it can guide deities into the realm of gods?" "I wish to ask all of you a question. Zhu Yao pointed to her surroundings. Just what kind of place is the realm of gods? What are gods like? Has anyone seen them before? Deities live as long as the heavens and earth. Which of them did not live for hundreds of thousands of years before they could enter the tower? But after so many years, why has no one ever seen the so-called gods? And everything regarding the god race is merely a legend. This is the law of the heavenly Tao. Nan Gongqing guessed. Just like how the people of the divine realm cannot casually descend to the lower realm. Most probably, the people of the realm of gods cannot come to the divine realm either, right? Even so, the lightning divine tower has existed for so many years, and this light of guidance has always been here, and has never been closed. Is there really not a single god who is curious enough to come down and take a look? How can the law of the heavenly Tao be broken so easily? Nan Gongqing said. You're saying that gods cannot be placed above the heavenly Tao? Or are they still restricted by it? I guess so. Alright, since that's the case. Zhu Yao seriously looked at the crowd. Then why are we still ascending to God? We're deities. We possess eternal life and unparalleled mystic powers. Other than the heavenly Tao, is there anything that deities cannot do? If the people of the God realm are merely living beings under the heavenly Tao, then what's the difference between the divine realm and the God realm? Zhu Yao continued to analyze. Actually, I've never understood. If becoming a deity is for longevity, then what's the purpose of becoming a god? Why do all deities take pride in entering the lightning divine tower? Why do all deities wish to become gods? What's the meaning of becoming a god? Have you ever thought about it? In an instant, the three of them were stunned. Including Yu Yan at the side, he had a blank look as well. Nan Gong Huang, tell me, why do we have to enter the tower? Back then it was for. Halfway through his words, he once again blanked, and his entire body was suddenly drenched in cold sweat. Because he suddenly realized that there was really no reason for him to become a god. It was as if becoming a god was an instinct. The higher his cultivation level, the more he would naturally want to become a god. Not just him, everyone in the divine realm was the same. No one had ever thought about the reason behind it. Why was it like this? If becoming a deity was for longevity, then what was the purpose of becoming a god? Could it be that it was purely for the sake of increasing one's cultivation level? However, ever since they entered the tower, their cultivation levels did not increase by much. Especially when they reached the final floor, they could not even use any of their divine energy, let alone cultivate. It was said that the people of the God realm had grasped the laws of the heavenly Tao, and were able to manipulate the mysteries of the heavens. However, even after such a long time, no one had ever seen a true God. If they were truly able to grasp the laws of the heavenly Tao, why weren't there any in the lower realm? Thinking about it carefully, the three of them could not help but begin to break out in cold sweat. Zhu Yao was a little shocked as well. Previously, she merely had a faint guess, but the deeper she thought about it, the more terrifying she felt. The so-called lightning divine tower, the so-called ascension to the God realm, seemed to be a huge scam. All the deities seemed to have been set up from the very beginning. As long as their cultivation level reached a certain level, they would enter the tower. However, thinking about it, there were countless checkpoints and difficulties along the way, and a single misstep would cost them their lives. Everyone knew that they would be able to become gods once they cleared the checkpoints, but as for the benefits of becoming a god, no one knew. Deities possessed endless lifespans in the first place, so what if they could not become gods? The god race did not seem to care about the divine realm either. So why did everyone have nothing better to do and come here to seek death? There seemed to be an invisible hand pushing everyone from the back, a hand called the heavenly Tao. For some reason, after hearing Zhu Yao's words, the desire to become a god in the depths of Nan Gongqing's heart was suddenly extinguished. However, what about Zhonglu? Nan Gong Huang? Zhu Yao solemnly said. No matter if it's becoming a devil or a god, I will not object to it. However, you have to think this through. No one knows what the god realm is like, but the devil race. She turned to look at Yu Ying. At the very least, you've seen it for yourself. Nan Gongqing lowered his head to look at his good friend in his embrace. Zhonglu's aura was already indiscernible. Gritting his teeth, he raised his head to look at the snow-white light of guidance, and softly cursed. Dongfeng girlie, I know you're doing this for our own good. However, my goal here is to become a god. No matter what lies ahead, we all wish to give it a try. He took a deep breath. Since the heavenly Tao is as such, I do not wish to resist. The hell? Zhu Yao wanted to curse out. How was this any different from choosing a dog? You saw Mei Shua's appearance earlier as well? Zhu Yao took a step forward. She clearly doesn't look like she's going to become a god. Just what use does this light of guidance have, and what consequences it will bring, no one knows. In fact, it's not even clear if she'll truly reach the god realm. Are you really going to take this risk? Dongfeng girlie. Nan Gongqing turned to look at her. His usual comical look was completely gone, and he had turned incomparably stern and serious. However, a hint of guilt was hidden in his eyes. If I'm alone, I will definitely believe you without any hesitation. And I will also believe Taoist Yuing. Even if I become a devil, it's nothing. However, Brother Zhonglu, I know his personality the best. He's a flower deity born from the spiritual energy of the heaven and earth. His heart is pure, but not tough enough. If he becomes a devil, he definitely won't be able to maintain his rationality like Yuing. He might not even be able to recognize me. And he might do something irreversible. Rather than that, I might as well follow the heavenly Tao. Zhu Yao sank into silence. Indeed, becoming a devil was equivalent to stimulating all the evil thoughts in the depths of one's heart, and infinitely magnifying them. Yuing was born as a god, which was why he was able to suppress his nature as a devil, and was willing to change. However, just because he was able to do it, it did not mean that Zhonglu could do it as well. Nan Gongqing did not explain any further. He immediately carried Zhonglu and walked towards the light of guidance. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.